Welcome to Deep Work Out Loud, the thinking that fuels our life, our work, and our leadership. I'm Julie Harris Oliver. This is the podcast where I sit with another professional coach and we do some work around a single concept, a piece of inspiration, a topic we've seen come up in coaching, something just we've been thinking about or reading about. And if we're really lucky while we're talking about it, we might demonstrate what coaching might look and feel like. But we'll see how this goes. It's all an experiment. And with any luck, you will leave with something that you can apply and use in your work or your life or both. Today, I'm here with Susan Lanphier. Susan has spent more than 3 decades in the technology sector, including 17 years at Microsoft, working alongside senior leaders through periods of rapid growth, high stakes, and constant change. Those experiences gave her a front row seat to what happens to leaders when the pressure is on and the emotional demands of the job go unaddressed. Today, she brings that inside perspective to her coaching work, helping leaders navigate change, deepen self-awareness, and show up with greater intention and impact. Her focus is at the intersection of identity and transformation by supporting leaders as they translate insight into meaningful action. Susan lives outside Seattle with her husband and has 2 adult children. She enjoys attending soccer games, boating, and traveling to visit family and friends. Hello, Susan.
Hello, Julie.
Thank you for being here.
Absolutely. I appreciate the opportunity to connect today.
I'm so glad you're here.
Thank you.
So, what have you been thinking about that we should be talking about?
I have been thinking about the power of the pause.
And
so
I love that.
Thank you. When I reflect on that, certainly in the workplace, but also in communications with people in our personal lives and professional lives, I think it's so important. The power of the pause can really bridge and provide an opportunity for choice when an emotional trigger comes up. And then it really depending on how we react or respond to that, it can really provide an opportunity for connection. And that's what I think is so important in leadership today, is creating connection with our colleagues, direct reports, managers, everybody that we encounter.
All the people.
Right.
So when you say the power of the pause, like, what do you mean? In what circumstances do you need to pause?
For example, when at work, if there is a emotionally charged situation or emotionally charged person, I think it's very important to provide a pause, meaning instead of coming at it from an emotional reaction or default trigger, developing the skill to create a pause, remain curious, and then show up with some grace and understanding of what truly might be going on for this other person or the team in these moments.
So like the difference from between responding and reacting.
Correct.
And boy, is this a skill I wish I had when I had those jobs where I feel triggered all the time.
I understand, and I believe it's a lifelong practice for sure.
Yeah. So what might it look like kind of in the micro? Because kind of walk us through.
Right. So, for example, maybe there's a situation where a manager has to give an employee feedback that may not be received very well.
Mm-hmm.
And in the actual conversation of giving feedback, say that employee responds with defensiveness or anger.
Sure.
And what is the manager going to do? There's a couple things. They could react and get defensive themselves. Or alternatively, they could pause and take a beat, whether that's a breath, whether that's just a couple breaths, and taking a beat in order to be curious about why the employee is reacting the way they are. And this may or may not be direct conversation, but what I know is that fear is ultimately the emotion that is underneath anger, defensiveness, and acknowledging that And coming from if the manager can acknowledge that internally or mentally, or even, be curious and ask the question to the employee, what is going on for you right now? Or how did this resonate with you when I said consistent feedback is that people don't find you approachable? For
Mhm.
example, what does that mean to you? And just allowing space and opportunity for processing, and letting the employee assign meaning to what that feedback, how that resonates with them. And so I think go ahead.
Oh, it sounds like in that circumstance that you're describing, the employee also needs to put in a pause, and it sounds like what you're suggesting is that the manager can actually help them create that pause and create that space where they can process it maybe a little bit differently, so that
Correct.
maybe they can have a more productive conversation.
Correct. And I think leaders set the stage for the
Mhm.
emotional temperature, whether it be in one-on-one conversations, in team meetings, in interactions with other teams. The leaders set the stage. And
Just walking into the room, they set the tone.
absolutely. It's interesting you mentioned that. I found a quote by Brené Brown,
Mm,
where she mentions what a leader brings into the room is what is acceptable in the room.
yeah.
Presence, emotion, whether they're, I think the somatics is important too. People pick up on that energy. So whether they're saying anything or not, what they bring can set the emotional temperature for an interaction, and vice versa,
W Well,
right?
we can see this on the macro stage right now, and what has
Absolutely.
happened to our public discourse with tone being set. So imagine how powerful that is just in a small setting and in a room, in an
Mhm,
organization, in a company.
mhm. Especially thinking of, more of a macro level, all of the challenges that are going on in today's workplace, particularly in high tech and in the Seattle area where we're having
Mhm.
thousands and thousands of layoffs,
Yeah.
and fear, uncertainty, and doubt really can be stirred up, with the layoffs, with AI disruption. And part of that, I think, is a learning opportunity for managers to see emotion as data points, to
Mm.
see emotion as, okay, this is not a personal attack. This person, this individual may be having some feelings underneath the anger. And can I be curious and respond with some empathy and just take that beat so there's an opportunity to respond as opposed to just react by default.
Yeah.
And
So it's one thing to know that, right?
correct. Correct.
It's another thing to know that. So what kind of work has to happen in order to get to that point where you can take the pause, be curious, be more reflective rather than just reacting?
Mhm. I think it really points back to our coaching, and my coaching in particular, where I just love to be able to guide people through their own discovery and work. And um, it's a self exploration opportunity for folks. And through coaching, and this is another area where coaching is very beneficial, and understanding for the leader, for people in general, what things might be getting in their way from making progress, from showing up
Mhm.
and being the leader that they truly want to be. What impact are they having on their employees, regardless of their intentions, right? And again, practice and the power of coaching. And like I had said earlier, for me personally, it's a lifelong journey. This does not happen overnight. I wish
No.
it did, right?
No, it
But
does
it does
not. It
not.
does not.
So practice is important, getting support, working with a coach, um, and and in the organization, normalizing emotions, and that it's okay, for these things to happen. I've been in situations before in my prior life working in technology where there have been layoffs. And the manager at the end of the day is like, okay, it's 5 o'clock. Everybody that was getting laid off has already been notified. You guys are all okay. So that's what I have to say, and everybody get back to work. And it's, hold on, wait a minute.
Hold on. Those people also have feelings.
Totally.
Yeah.
And we all do, right? And it's just, there's such an opportunity for normalizing the very challenging environment that is occurring in organizations today, normalizing the emotions that people are having and providing space for that processing, for in that example, the survivor guilt, the, oh my gosh, now we have to do more with fewer resources, all of those things, and having those conversations to get clarity is really
Now, when you talk about emotions at work,
important.
sorry, I interrupted you.
No, go ahead.
When we talk about emotions at work, and there for so long has been this talk of, I mean, and it comes with women are too emotional to lead or do whatever the thing, and emotions have no place at work. It's all rational. I know this is really old thinking and old talk. However, there is a lot of anger at work, an expression of anger at work, and somehow that hasn't ever really been counted as emotional. And so holding space for these things, like that's not the emotion we want everybody to be expressing, but we do want to be able to hold space for people to process and have thoughts and feelings about things.
Yes. It's, I think, yes, a critical differentiation is this is not about allowing people to fly off the handle and yell and all the things. This is not a place for inappropriate expression of emotion, and those boundaries are really important. Rather, having open conversations and having that environment of psychological safety so employees feel like they can say what's on their mind without feeling like they're going to be experience retaliation in their career, on their performance review, what have you.
Yeah, it's like allowing the space for people to be human,
Right.
bringing some humanity in there. It feels like it starts with noticing, like when you're reacting to something strongly, and then unpacking why. I have many examples when I was in certain jobs, and I think one of them I talked about already on maybe the Michael Shea's podcast. But there have been a few times, and they always stand out to me because I'm always so embarrassed afterwards, where I did get triggered by something and reacted in a way that I, if not immediately, then shortly after, really regretted. But it just felt so heightened in the moment, and I was triggered by something, and always it was about fear, I got to say. And as you were saying, like the practice of not letting that take over in the moment is such a vital piece, to be able to stop and breathe and emotionally regulate. It feels like everybody's talking about emotional regulation right now.
Right.
It seems to be the biggest thing that collectively we need to work on.
I am hearing the same and experiencing the same as well. Right.
What ways are you thinking about working on emotional regulation?
I think in my personal life, definitely any relationship, any interaction, communications. Personally, when I'm in a conversation with my husband and we have differing opinions, we have different experiences, the same thing may be happening, but we're experiencing it two different ways. And those old beliefs that no longer serve me can get triggered. And the emotional regulation comes into place when I can pause and keep my mouth shut for a few minutes, or a few seconds, actually, a few moments, right? Minutes.
Anything is a win.
Yeah, minutes, that's a little bit too long.
Anything is a win. I remember when we were talking about doing this podcast together, and you were relaying a story that started with, like, you got out of your car to go back with, and another thing, or, and you know what? Like, and it just made me laugh because, if you're ever starting a sentence with, and you know what, you're in trouble.
Absolutely.
Stop right there.
That is so funny. And it's so true. And, I was going to say embarrassed to say, but reality is that didn't happen too long ago, where it was so funny. It's like I walked out of the house and prior to walking out of the house, my husband said, well, do we have anything to talk about? And I said, no. I walk out of the house and I stop and I turn around and I walk back into the house because I'm like, you know what? We do have some things to talk about. And boy,
you know what?
And, check my motives. What were my motives in that moment? My motive was to be right.
To be right.
To be right. You want to
Yep.
hear from me, you're going to get it. That's exactly
Yeah.
what happened. And talking about your story and that example, there's always an opportunity for repair.
Mhm.
I don't do this perfectly. Leaders learning these skills are not going to do it perfectly. It's practice. And so there's always opportunity for repair to come back and just say, hey, I did not show up the way I wanted to in that moment. And I know you had talked with Aiko Bethia, and
Mhm.
part of her framework in her new book is around the accountability and taking accountability for the impact I had on a person. I think that is so critical in personal life, in professional life. And it doesn't matter about intention. Well, I didn't mean to do that. Well, you took it the
Mhm.
wrong way. No, it's about setting all of that stuff aside and recognizing the impact I had on another person and owning that. And I think that's something I'm working on when it comes to emotional regulation. That is for sure.
How do you open the conversation about impact?
Being specific. When I stormed back in the house and I lit you up verbally, that was not okay. I don't want to show up that way. You did not deserve that. It's about taking the accountability for my own actions and not placing any blame whatsoever on the other person. Doesn't matter what they did. Doesn't
Yeah.
matter what they said to me. Doesn't matter if they called me a name.
There's no "you made me."
That's right. Oh, absolutely.
Yeah. Yeah. There's a certain maturity, I think, and this has come up in a lot of podcasts, the maturity piece.
Mhm,
It's like it's funny, no matter how old I get, I still feel pretty immature, but little by little, we get that maturity.
mhm,
And part of it is just really owning all the pieces of yourself and owning your own behavior and owning how you interact with other people. And sure, like, you may get triggered with stuff and you still own how you react.
mhm. And I think that's where self-compassion can come into play as well. Yes, owning and yet not beating yourself up at the same time. Not feeling like a piece of, poo on the bottom of my shoe kind of thing.
The
Um,
waves of regret that come
right.
to you in the middle of the night.
And again, those things are normal, but comes back to the choice. Am I going to totally react to all those things and be down in the dumps for days and not show up the way I want to because I'm full of self-pity, for example? Or am I going to be able to say, gosh, I really screwed that up. I'm not perfect. I'm glad I owned my stuff. Opportunity to do it different next time.
Next time I'll do better.
Right, that reframing, I think, is really important.
So where should we go from here?
I think another key factor in this, or another thing that I like to think about, is assumptions
Hmm.
and judgment.
Say more.
So if I'm in an encounter, a conversation, I may be judging that person. I may
Hmm.
think that I know exactly where they're coming from, why they're saying this, all those different things, judgment, and that blocks curiosity. That
Mhm.
blocks an opportunity for connection, an opportunity for understanding.
The curiosity piece, I think, is so important because the very act of being curious at all, like, what is behind that? Or what do you w I sense that you're actually really hurt. Like, what happened? Like, any sort of curiosity
Mhm.
towards somebody else's reaction, I think, is really disarming.
Absolutely.
So it serves so many purposes because one, you're interrupting your own judgment and your own assumptions of what's going on with them, but you're also disarming them
Mm,
because then they don't have to fight you because you're curious about their experience.
right, right,
I mean, they still might choose to fight you, but
right.
they don't have to.
One thing that I've been taught is, don't give them anything to push against. Don't
Mm,
put up a lot of my own resistance because then it becomes about what I'm doing and not the real issue. I mean, it just
mhm.
leads to a tangent. It can lead to a
Well, it's like if you're feeling, sick, like you have a cold
Mhm,
and, people in your family are dismissing you like, "Oh, you don't feel that bad, you're fine." Then you gotta really dig into the cold,
mhm. Oh, yeah.
then you gotta really be, like, so sick, even maybe sicker than you actually feel because no one believes you, and you gotta dig in.
Mhm.
I think it's like that.
Yes, and I think too, humans want to be seen and they want to be heard.
Mm-hmm.
And so coming at a person with your own biases and your own judgments, even though you may not even be aware of them, coming at a person puts them on the defensive. And like I said, then all of a sudden we're down a tangent that isn't really about the issue at hand.
Yeah, it's not about the thing.
Right. Right.
So in a workplace, whether you're a leader or not, actually, because it's very easy to get lost in, we have all these things to do. I don't have time to deal with your whatever.
Mhm.
Just do the thing, would you?
Yeah.
But I feel like in today's world, in today's workplace, that it's not so much a luxury to slow down.
Mm.
It feels really imperative right now.
Mhm.
Are you seeing that too?
Yes, very much so. In fact, I was talking with a client yesterday, and career growth, next steps. Where does she want to take her career? Feeling stagnant, wanting to be more strategic, all these things. And we've talked about, okay, let's block off some time on your calendar. I mean, she came up with that idea, and yet that hasn't happened yet because there's so many things that happen day in and day out that require her attention, pulled in a million different directions. Leading a team and issues are popping up. And that is the reality.
Prioritizing yourself is hard
Very hard. Yeah.
and important. I wonder how is she working on being able to do that?
She blocks some time on her calendar every Friday to prioritize herself and being able to think strategically, rise above the weeds, right? And it was yesterday it was a recommitment to doing that and recognizing how important that is to her to be able to do that for her own professional growth and for where she wants to go. And so I think a lot of times it is a recommitment and some self-compassion. Okay, I didn't get to that goal over the last 2 weeks. I'm going to still practice and work on delegating things and commit to making it happen.
I met a client today who was very clear about here are the priorities in my life.
Mm-hmm.
Time with myself, time with my children, time with my husband, time exercising.
Mm-hmm.
I don't work after hours. She has a huge job. And the fact that she said time with myself first, like I was stunned. I don't think I've ever said that in my life. And I was like, I will take a note.
Right.
To be able to prioritize time with yourself when you have small children and a big job and a husband and all the things.
Right.
Wow.
That is amazing. I love that and admire her for that. And I think that's where a lot of the solution lies. It's about identity too. I think in that example, she can or could feel pulled in many different directions.
Oh, she definitely does.
Sure. And recognizing that she has agency, she has choices and can set boundaries for herself and for others, it's very empowering.
And the conviction that I know that I am going to be better for all these
Mhm.
other people
That's
if I
right.
take that time for myself.
Absolutely. Isn't that the truth?
Yeah.
Right. That's really important.
So if we're looking at as you said, the power of the pause and what can happen if you allow yourself to take those pauses, what is something you would leave us with about that? Something to think about if someone's considering trying to incorporate pauses into their interactions.
I think the main thing that is important is the pause creates opportunity for connection. And isn't that what humans want? Is connection.
Humans are wired for connection.
That's right. That's right.
Yeah.
So for me, and I believe for others that I've coached, it's worth the investment. It's worth the time, the practice to provide extra opportunity for connection with people.
How can people find you?
Well, I do have my own coaching company, Susan Lanphier Coaching, and my website is susanlcoaching.com. I'm also on LinkedIn. And I invite folks to join me for a complimentary Align and Accelerate call. is what I call it.
Align and accelerate.
Align and accelerate.
What's that?
That is aligning values definitely come into play, aligning how you want to show up in your life, in your work, and then coming up with one clear small action that can be implemented today, in the near future, in order to help move forward.
Great. I think people should take you up on that.
Thank you. Oh, the folks can schedule that through my website or LinkedIn as well.
Okay, I'll link to all those things in the show notes.
Thank you.
Susan Lanphier, thank you so much for doing this.
You're so welcome. I appreciate the opportunity to connect with you.
Likewise. This has been Deep Work Out Loud. I'm Julie Harris Oliver. I'd like to thank Susan Lanphier for joining the podcast. If any of this resonates with you, please subscribe and leave a review at all the podcast places or share it with a friend. If you'd like to work with me, you can find me at julieharrisoliver.com. And let me leave you this invitation. Where in your life could you practice pausing and responding rather than reacting? I'm sure there are plenty of opportunities that come up. So how could you start to notice when you react maybe sooner than you would like and try to implement a pause right there? Okay, try some things. Report back. Thanks for listening. See you next time.